All right. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today for the Leaving a Legacy Coffee and Chat featuring Christy Coulter and Pete Ferry. And so before I hand things off to Christy and Pete, I wanted to, first of all, tell you a little bit about them, beginning with Christy Coulter. With nearly 20 years of nonprofit leadership experience, Christy specializes in planned giving strategy that helps organizations build long-term sustainability and help donors align their values with lasting impact. Her work has helped inspire hundreds of millions of dollars in legacy gifts to both loved ones and charitable causes. Christy holds degrees in psychology and communication, a Master of Arts in Higher Education, a certificate in fundraising management from the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, and is a fellow in charitable estate planning, also known as FCEP. Christy loves biking. She once cycled across the country for charity and leads historical food tours in her hometown and at a local winery. She lives in St. Paul, Minnesota with her dog Lucy and 24 thriving houseplants, which is impressive. Last but not least, Pete Ferry is a gift officer with the Park Nicollet Foundation, specializing in planned giving. Pete focuses on helping people discover ways to establish their philanthropic legacy. Pete has 15 years of experience with several different nonprofits, but has a real passion for healthcare. Through his efforts, the Park Nicollet Foundation has increased planned giving commitments and Legacy Society members by nearly 50% in the last 2 years. When he's not working, Pete enjoys working out, playing board games, and hanging out with his family and dog Louie. So without further ado, Christy and Pete, thank you so much for joining us today, and I will hand it off to you.
Thank you so much. Really glad to be here. Excited to talk with you about smart giving strategies and ways in which you can be intentional about your generosity, whether it's with your loved ones or with your favorite nonprofits. So without further ado, let me walk you through our session today. So Abby, next slide. All right. So the first thing that we will spend time on is the giving landscape. We want to just kind of paint a picture of what does generosity look like at large, and what's happening in this big wealth transfer that's taking place here in our country. Then we'll spend a little bit of time on why smart giving matters. Then we've prepared a case study for you to kind of learn a little bit about some of these strategies and how it fits within one person's story and how it might fit within your own. We'll touch base on different ways to give and some notable life events to be paying attention to when it, again, comes to giving in smart and intentional ways. And then we will wrap things up by talking about why does this matter and where on earth do you start? So let's head to the giving landscape. So on this next slide, what we wanted to just highlight is, who has estate plans in place? Because oftentimes when it comes to intentional generosity, we can do that throughout the course of our lives, but a lot of it doesn't happen until we've passed away. And I'll show you a slide here in a minute on this. The first thing that I just want to kind of normalize, but also maybe prompt some movement, is when it comes to estate plans, on average, American adults, only 45% actually have estate plans in place. Now, what you'll see here is that the older that an individual is, the higher chance it is that they have something in place. So you might see yourself in one of these categories. Those that are over the age of 72, about 81% of them have estate documents in place. When it comes to that 55 to 71, which I think all of us know individuals in this category or fall there ourselves, only 46% actually do. And then when we look at the younger individuals here in our country, almost a quarter of them do. So lots of motivation and lots of good reason to put something in place, is not just to tell the government or probate court what you want to have happen, but also to love our families well. I think we're called to that. There's something very intentional that we can do when we actually say, this is what we want to have happen. We steward month to month to month. What does it look like to steward what we have in our resources when we're no longer here? So on this next slide, I also want to highlight generosity. So in America, we see year to year to year consistent and intentional generosity. On average, about 69% of Americans give to charity each year, which is very significant. And when we're looking at this from country to country, America actually falls at the top. So we're very generous as a country. We understand the value of giving to nonprofits. But where there's a big disparity is when a lot of our wealth becomes available when we do pass away. Less than 10% are doing something for charity in their estate plan. And if you remember, this means of those with an estate plan. So the percentage actually, when we're thinking about Americans that are doing something at the end of life, it's around 4 to 5% are actually committing something at the end of life. On the next slide, what you will see is this huge disparity between what we have in terms of liquidity. So when organizations, whether it's Park Nicollet Foundation or others that you care a lot about, when organizations are asking for gifts, oftentimes they're asking for you to give out of your liquid assets. So this would be gifts of cash. That actually makes up about 9% of most of our net worth. 91% is buried. So until there's a big liquidation event, meaning we sell a home or we liquidate stocks or that business that we've been running for many, many years is something we're ready to sell, unless those events are happening or maybe an inheritance is coming our way, most of our assets don't become available until we pass away. So when it comes to philanthropic decisions, when it comes to smart giving, most of us are giving out of a very tiny portion of what we have available to us. And so another reason why thinking strategically about giving, especially at the end of our lives, matters so much. Abby, if you want to go to the next slide, I want to talk just at large about this great wealth transfer that we've all been talking about and hearing about. So we have significant wealth in this country. And over the next 20 to 30 years, depending on what article you're reading, somewhere around 100 to 140 trillion dollars will transfer from one generation to the next. So this slide, we're not going to dive too deep into, but what you will see is that that blue box and that gray or silver box, so over half of the wealth in America is going to be transitioning. So again, when we're thinking about generosity, when we're thinking about caring well for our families, estate plans become really important. And thinking about how these assets transfer, when they transfer, tax implications of that transfer really does matter. On the next slide, you can actually see this broken down just a little bit more clearly. While the other one's a beautiful graphic, this actually shows you in kind of summary numbers here. So the first two rows, silent generation and baby boomers, that wealth is what we're talking about when we say it's transferring. Now, what we talked about earlier is that 9% of the wealth of these generations is in cash, which means a lot of it's in these equities and mutual funds, it's in real estate, it's in pensions or other retirement plans, and it's in private businesses. So one of the encouragements that both Pete and I have for you today is if you are transitioning some of these assets, what does it look like to transition intentionally? If you're transitioning them while you're living, maybe in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, how are you thinking strategically about your tax savings and how giving fits within that? How are you thinking about the next generation who's maybe inheriting this and what they care about, what their passions are? Do they align with yours? We do see some consistent shifts in what different generations care about. And so I'll pause for a minute, Pete, and let you chime in for, what does this mean here at Park Nicollet Foundation?
Yeah, thanks so much, Christy, and good morning, everybody. As Abby mentioned, I'm Pete Ferry. I'm a gift officer who is focusing on our plan giving program here at the Park Nicollet Foundation. One really interesting thing, and Christy pointed it out on an earlier slide, that we're sort of starting to see is we started actually marketing and sharing information about plan giving with the younger generation, with millennials and Generation X. And we've started to see some real estate, or pardon me, some estate gift commitments from millennials and Generation X that we hadn't seen in the past. So, it's I think a matter of awareness and also a matter of just it traditionally hasn't been a focus of nonprofits or of people of that generation to kind of think, well, let's think about planned giving or let's think about our estate, let's get things organized. But if people are presented with the information and see why it's a benefit and see why they can do it, then there's no reason why some of the younger generations can't become can't plan their estate or plan their legacy. And we're starting to see that more and more. So we've received a couple of estate commitments from individuals who are in their 30s, which we hadn't in the past, and it's an encouraging sign all around. And as we continue, we'll share why that's beneficial, not only to the organization, but also to the individuals and some of their financial health. So thanks, Christy.
Of course. Thank you, Pete. So the last thing I'll highlight here in this kind of data-oriented section is on the next slide, which touches on how different generations, at least in general, tend to support organizations. So what I love pointing out here is actually millennials tend to give at a higher percentage, just slightly, than Gen Xers, but millennials are definitely just beginning to ramp up in terms of what their assets look like and what their abilities to give look like. So super encouraging. So for those of you that are perhaps in older generations, be encouraged that our younger folks are willing to give as well. The other thing that I'll just note here is that silent generation and boomers are really known for loyalty and consistency. So they're consistently giving to organizations that they've probably been giving to for a long period of time. That doesn't mean that occasionally that shifts, but in general, that's a pretty consistent trend. What we actually see with Gen Xers is that they're far more known for participation and volunteerism. And so, when we think of that transfer of wealth, or whether we're the one doing it or we're the one receiving it, and we fall into that category, what does generosity look like? And does it stay in that volunteer space, or does it shift to financial as well? And then millennials, actually those younger than millennials, are very much known for giving based on causes, activism, and so they're not necessarily committed to specific organizations. So when you are thinking about your estate, when you're thinking about your legacy, my encouragement to you would be think about what does this look like to transfer wealth from one generation to the next? How do you anticipate them using that gift from you? But also, what does it look like to create a legacy at those organizations that you have been supporting for a period of time? And maybe inviting your family to participate in that as well. At least that could be an option. So just noting some of these trends and some of these statistics. So in our next section, we are going to talk just a little bit about what we're hearing when it comes to generosity and giving in intentional and smart ways. So what you'll see is first what we're hearing. So when it comes to planned giving or giving from assets instead of cash or giving through one's estate, these are things that we hear all the time in our work. One, these strategies are only for people with a lot of money, and that's not me. What's amazing is how untrue this actually is. If someone has generosity in their heart, they want to make a difference, there is almost always a way to do so. And there's almost always a smart way to do so. And so don't write off the fact that you aren't Bill Gates or someone else with significant wealth. If you have a heart and a desire, there's almost always a beautiful strategy that will work for you. Next would be that giving from my estate takes money away from kids and grandkids. And often we hear this, and often the primary goal is we want to leave as much as we can in our estate to those that we love. And that is always a priority, right? That's something that if you're working with someone that's helping you think strategically about your giving, that should be a priority. And there are actually some vehicles that allow you to do both, allow you to give to your loved ones and give to charity. And we'll teach you about one here in a little bit. Next, I'll feel a lot of pressure to give a lot of money if I have a conversation with someone like Pete or maybe someone else at an organization you love. And the reality is they're partners in your philanthropy. Pete's goal, other development officers' goal really is to help you think strategically about your giving. And if it aligns with that organization, great. If it doesn't, that's okay. You are the guide and the leader of your giving. And so what we want to do in whatever seat we're sitting in is provide you with good strategies, smart strategies.
Yeah, and I think
Next is,
Christy,
yep, go
sorry,
ahead.
Christy, just to chime in on a couple of those just real quick. The first one about strategies are only for people with a lot of money, and that's not me. It's not something that just unlocks when you have a certain level of wealth. The strategies that are applicable for people with a lot of money are sometimes a lot of the same strategies for just people across the board. And that's very important to kind of keep in mind as this sort of thing gets planned out. Then just a comment too on pressure to give a lot of money. The role of the gift officer is really to present opportunity, not to ask for a lot of money. So as Christy was saying, it's all about just showing and demonstrating what different opportunities there are for you, for the individual to be able to sort of just honor and support and do the things that they're very passionate about. And so my role as a gift officer is really looking at it like, how can I provide as many opportunities as possible to demonstrate to this individual that there are some ways that if they like, they could help support an organization that means a lot to them. That even the title of gift, it's not called, write a check officer. It's called a gift officer, meaning that, there's intention behind the gift. There's value to the giver behind the gift, and that's really the I guess you could say negative stereotype that we want to get rid of, is that it's we're going to come in and ask for a check or ask for you to include a ton of money to the organization. So just wanted to add those
That's
two
great.
things.
Thank you so much, Pete. That's perfect. A couple other things, and then Pete, I want to let you chime in right at the tail end, but a couple
Sure.
other things that we do here a lot is, I already have a will or a trust in place, which then will say, yay, congrats, you're in the minority. But then there's this sentiment, okay, I want to do something, but it's going to take a ton of effort to make these changes. And I just don't know if I want to take that step. And we'll chat with you a little bit at the end on some strategies that actually don't involve your attorney, wouldn't require you to go back and make updates to your estate plan. So that is sometimes a part of the process, depending upon the goal, but it doesn't have to be. Next, there are so many options and experts saying different things. I feel paralyzed. And that always makes my heart a little sad. And that goal here is not to cause paralysis, but really to teach you about some options, some strategies, and then come alongside and help you actually implement those. And then lastly, thinking about my legacy reminds me of death and its inevitability. And I don't like thinking about this, and so I'm going to ignore it. And I think this is probably at the heart of why so few people actually have estate documents in place. It's we don't like thinking about our humanity, the fact that we won't be here, and also, thus far, no one has lived forever. And so, what does it look like for us to actually put something in place that does align with the lives we've lived, the legacy we're creating every day, so that our loved ones really are cared for in that process? And so I think we're all facing that reality and maybe avoiding that reality. And also it is there. And so it's worth taking a little time and thinking about what does this mean and how do I communicate who I am through this plan? Pete, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think this one is obviously a very it's sort of a mental shift, but the mental shift is really important, especially from the nonprofit's perspective, because the gift itself, the legacy and the intentionality behind it is really a celebration during the giver's lifetime about what's important to them, about what their legacy will be. So when we're planning estate giving, that's really when the celebration during life begins, about honoring again and supporting the organizations and causes that are so impactful and meaningful in your life. And so estate planning, or at least estate gifting, I guess you could say, even though the actual physical gift doesn't come into place until after death. Once that intention is made, it's really a celebration. It's really about the individual's life. It's really about the giver's intentions, and we get to celebrate it with that person while they're living as a nonprofit and as an organization. So um, the the sort of, I guess, sequence of it, while it seems like it's something that is just going to be something that doesn't come into play until after death, that's not the reality for the nonprofit at all. And once we can make that relationship and understand who is intending gifts at some point, then during the donor's lifetime, we can really celebrate, we can really understand how to properly use that gift so that we honor the individual. We can talk about updates and different things. And we can develop what's called a legacy society, which I'll get into later, but we can really celebrate the legacy of the giver while they're living.
That's great. Thanks for calling that out. So a couple trends on the next slide that we want to highlight in terms of giving would be, and again, this is what I'm seeing every single day with increasing regularity. So first, families are becoming more intentional with their legacy and discussing it with kids and grandkids. And one of the first things I'll hear from most families that I get the privilege of working with is, it's really important that the relationships between my kids and my grandchildren, that those stay strong, or if there's already challenges, that this doesn't cause it to be a bigger issue. And so a huge part of what can help with that is actually talking about goals, talking about how someone has structured their estate plan, why they're doing their giving, how they hope their kids will utilize whatever that inheritance is. So there's a lot of intentionality and some really meaningful conversations that are being had. And so my encouragement to you, if you have a great plan in place, but you haven't yet talked with your loved ones, I would encourage you to find a way to do that. If a conversation's too hard, write a letter. Document it in some way. That heart, that why matters, and can really alleviate potential challenges. Next up, we are seeing that parents are actually giving more to their kids more often during life and perhaps leaving them a little bit less in the estate. So they're actually witnessing what that generosity can look like within their lifetimes. And one of the key questions then is, how much is too much, and what impact do I want my estate to have, and how am I choosing to make a difference? And so thinking about those things, wrestling with them, and considering what does it look like to see your loved ones experience the joy of receiving a gift from you can be pretty powerful. Somewhat similar to the last slide, there is some overwhelm by options, and so donors then choose to do nothing, that paralysis. So part of what our hope is to alleviate some of that and show you some really great strategies. And then families want to involve their heirs in giving now. We're seeing a huge trend in this intergenerational generosity. So inviting kids and grandkids to participate in giving some of the resources or assets that parents, grandparents have away. And then lastly, donors today care a lot about impact. And so there's an expectation of regular updates and stories about how the gifts are making a difference. And so this is something where if you are feeling this desire and you're not seeing it from those nonprofits that you are supporting, I'd encourage you to ask those questions because it holds us accountable in our spaces, but also it gives you an opportunity to see the power of your gift at play. So that's an expectation we're seeing a huge shift in. Pete, anything you would add?
No, I think that hits the nail on the head, and just kind of what we were talking about in the last slide. The impact today of the gift and sort of just that relationship with the organization that you're supporting will really allow for the organization to maximize that gift once it's there. We've had we call them from the technical end. Estate gifts, which are really generous and wonderful, but they sort of just fall out of the sky. We don't really know what the intention is. We don't necessarily properly know how to use it. We don't really know how to honor the generosity of an individual who is making that gift. So establishing that relationship will provide, again, a real celebration, tons of updates, stories, and we'll all be in kind of lockstep on how to honor that legacy in real time and in the future as well.
That's great. Thank you. All right, so just wanted to highlight, and we're going to fly through this slide, but there are so many benefits to strategic generosity. So what you'll see on the top section is the financial benefits today and in the future. So some of these smart giving strategies actually can impact your income taxes, your estate taxes, especially here in Minnesota, where the estate tax threshold is $3 million and it's not combinable. So there's some legwork that attorneys have to play to ensure that estates that are over 3 million are minimizing those estate taxes, and charitable giving actually can do that, sometimes 100%. It can definitely increase annual giving. So your ability to give can actually increase when you're using these strategies. And when individuals choose to give, financial clarity is always a part of that. And then when it comes to giving in the future, so this would be either a future gift that you're planning on making or one out of your estate, there are actually income generating vehicles that exist. And we'll walk through one here in a minute. And again, these different strategies can help with estate taxes. And then on the softer side of things, there are benefits to others. There's this long-term impact that can be made at organizations that you love. It can serve as an example to your heirs, encouraging a culture of generosity within your family. And that tends to be a value that I hear parents, grandparents share, is they value generosity. In the way that it shows up in their family might be unique. And so this type of generosity out of your estate or in a strategic moment during life can really represent that in a big way. And then there are personal benefits as well. So generosity, whether it's today or down the road, can strengthen those family values and dynamics within the family. And there is a ton of research, we could spend hours on this, about how generosity actually impacts your health. We're talking cardiovascular health and stress and anxiety and all sorts of things. And so there are a ton of benefits when it comes to being strategic about your generosity, both financially within the relationships you have and then personally. Okay, so let's get into the fun stuff. I want to walk through a case study of how strategic giving in one's estate plan looks. So meet Dan and Erica. Now this is a picture of a different couple, but this is a real couple that I did work with. They were in their kind of late 60s, early 70s when we first met. They actually sat through a presentation kind of like this from a nonprofit that they love. And they came up afterward and reached out saying, you know, hey, we've had on our to-do list update our estate plans for like 20 years. We did something when our kids were young. Now they're, you know, adults in their late 20s, early 30s, and we're retired and we really need to do something. So this timing is perfect. And we're excited to think about how we can use the values we have and integrate those into our plans. So let's look at their goals. On the next slide, I highlighted a couple things that came out of our first meeting. So first thing, they wanted to get organized and simplify, and not just clean up my closets and minimize the things that I have, but actually organize my documents, make sure that everything is easy. If something happened to me tomorrow, my spouse, my kids would know where to find those key documents. They wanted to understand where they were at and what is possible with their plan. They wanted to, and I see this with a lot of families, they wanted to create great memories with loved ones. They wanted to continue enjoying family today, not just leave something big for them when they were gone. They wanted to ensure that their two sons were independent and kind. And something I didn't note here, but that did surface, is one of their sons is doing really well, has a great career, a great partner. And so they weren't really concerned about that son. But they have this other son, relationship is good between them, but another son who was a little bit more of a spendthrift, not terribly responsible yet with his finances, and is dating someone that they're not terribly keen on. So they had some concerns about, a large sum of money entering his hands in a short period of time. And then lastly, they did want to support their favorite nonprofits. That was a part of the conversation. And often if someone is sitting through a session like this, there's a element of generosity as a part of who they are. So on this next slide, I'm just going to walk you through their current plan. So their estate was worth about $1 million, so not gigantic, but not terribly small. And there's a couple filters that I'm always looking at someone's estate plan through. So first, I'm looking at estate taxes. So that's the overarching tax that an estate will have. Now, for them, when we're looking at the federal estate taxes, that is pretty significant right now, $13.99 million per person. Next year, it's going to increase to about $15 million per person, and it's combinable. So they're well below that threshold, unless they, somehow win the lottery. Highly unlikely that we're dealing with federal estate taxes. Next filter, we're looking at the state that they live in and any state estate taxes that exist. Now they're in Minnesota. As I mentioned earlier, the Minnesota estate tax threshold is 3 million. And so we are definitely below that. But again, if something major happened, if there was a big inheritance coming their way, again, the lottery circumstance, maybe we'd have estate taxes in Minnesota. But right now, not something we need to plan for in a big way. So then the next filter that we're looking through, and feel free, those of you that are listening and kind of thinking, okay, how does this apply to my plan? Whether your estate is larger, smaller, most individuals have some assets that are going to have tax implications to kids, even if the estate doesn't have an estate tax. And then most of us also have assets that will pass nice and easy to our loved ones. So for them, we have the green box, which is the balance of the estate to heirs. That's the good stuff. That's the stuff that'll pass nice and easy to loved ones. So we're thinking, anything they've paid or purchased or paid a premium on after they've paid income tax. So Roth IRAs, life insurance, home, property, investment accounts that are non-retirement, all of those will transfer and actually get a step up in basis. So even if they bought it for really inexpensive and it's grown in huge value, at the time they pass, that step up in basis applies and it'll go easy to loved ones. So for them, about 60% of their estate was in that category. Now, on the other side, we have the pre-tax assets. Sometimes this is called tax deferred, sometimes this is called qualified, but these assets are ones that they've not yet paid income tax on. So typically, we're talking about traditional IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, some annuities, some pensions. So for them, they had about 400,000 in their IRAs collectively. Now, when that passes to the next generation, there is going to be income tax on that at the level that the inheritor is at. So for them, it would be their two sons, just like they pay income tax when they take it at retirement. So that the government's going to want their taxes on that money. So for them, we have this $400,000 bucket. The kids have to take it out in 10 years. So IRAs have a 10-year window once it's getting inherited, unless you're a spouse, that it has to be taken out in. What we see over and over and over and over again, even with really wise, smart loved ones, most take it out in 1 to 2 years. So if their two sons do that, and they are each getting 200,000 of this, taking it in 1 to 2 years, between federal and estate income tax, we're probably looking at somewhere between 35 and 50% income tax. Now that at 40% in this illustration is 160,000. This is not bad, right? The remaining balance stays with the kids, 240,000, plus they got that 600,000 as well. And this is what most people's plan looks like. If Dan passes away, Erica gets everything. When Erica passes, two sons get everything. So this is normal, but it doesn't include some of their values of generosity. It doesn't include concerns or address the issues that they have about one of their sons. And so it's not a bad plan, but it maybe doesn't align as closely with who they are. So in the next illustration, we're going to walk through a kind of updated version and where Dan and Erica landed. So it looks complicated. We're going to walk through each section here really nicely. So what you'll see is that balance of estate was 600,000. That is still going to the kids. So we're not messing with that one at all. But what we are playing with is that $400,000. So they decided they wanted to do a 5% gift to charity at the time both of them passed away. This is oftentimes called a charitable bequest. You'll see that here reflected. 5% of 1 million is $50,000. This can go to one charity, it can go to 3 charities, but for someone with an estate valued at 1 million, probably 50,000 is one of the best, biggest and best one-time gift they've ever been able to make. What's really smart is when we're looking at an estate like this, any gift to charity at the time someone passes away, it's smartest to start with those pre-tax assets because they go 100% tax-free to charity. So this $50,000, we're going to peel out of that $400,000 on the previous slide, and that'll go tax-free to, let's say it's Park Nicollet and a couple other charities. Most people choose 3 to 5. Now we still have that $350,000 in that pre-tax bucket. What you'll see here is that I am putting that into, and this is what Dan and Erica did, they put it into what's called a charitable remainder unitrust, or CRUT for short. We love acronyms in the world of giving. So the CRUT, I like to think of it as a give it twice trust. So you put something into it, it gets invested. Then over time, you slowly peel income from it. In this example, I set it at 5% and paying it out over 20 years. So we're really slowing it down. 5 times 20 is 100. So we're allowed and able to see 100% of that funding amount flow to the kids. So this is a win because they're still getting all of that 350,000 in the IRA to loved ones. In this example, we have the payout amount at 5% each year. What I'm also showing is a 1% growth year over year. So on average, growing 6% a year. Now, as we know, the markets fluctuate, but what we do tend to see is that these grow 6 to 8% a year on average. So if that 5% is getting recalculated every year, and it's getting a little bit bigger, 1% year over year, what's actually going to the sons, which starts at $17,500 a year, split two ways, not a bad part-time job for mom and dad, that actually will get bigger over time. And it's projected to grow with that little bit of 1% growth over 20 years. It's projected to grow to 381,000. So actually more than what the funding amount was. And because it's flowing out to the kids as income more slowly, they're probably going to stay in their current tax bracket, which we show at 25%. And then that give it twice element. So we have the income stream to loved ones, and this is the long game. But whatever is left in that charitable trust at year 20 goes to charity. And with that projected growth year over year over year, that's $417,000. So that's an amazing gift. That did not exist in the estate before. We are just utilizing tools that are there that are great, smart strategies for some families. I would argue many families. And so if you go to the next slide, Abby, you will see the comparison between the current plan and the updated plan. And what you'll see at the bottom is the heirs actually get more in the second plan. They still get that 600,000 up front, and they get this income stream for 20 years, getting them to 885,000 instead of 860. What didn't exist before was a gift to charity. We had zero to charity, and now we have almost $500,000. So this couple with a relatively modest estate can make a tremendous difference for their kids and for charity. And so I just want you to absorb the fact that there are amazing strategies that exist that can make a huge difference for family, kids, grandkids, and for those organizations that you love.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think just kind of when I started kind of learning about this, I think if no one takes anything away from this conversation today, if the one little tidbit you take away is sort of knocking down the stigma that if I leave more money to charity, my kids and loved ones will have less. That is simply not true, and the opposite is true in many cases with a lot of the tools that are available. So that was kind of a really eye-opening thing for me when I started in some of this work. And again, if the numbers and everything that if it kind of makes your brain hurt a little bit to kind of process it all now, just take this away that giving to charity cannot, in many cases, cannot take away from giving to your loved ones. They can coexist and actually both flourish and actually both have more to them. So sorry, Christy, that's just my little 2-cent takeaway from this.
Yeah, I'm so glad you shared that. So the biggest thing, if you go to the next slide here, that I'm going to fly through this because I want to make sure we get to notable life events. But biggest thing is that they realized they didn't have to have tons and tons and tons of wealth to make a really big difference. And they can be generous, they can make sure that things are in place. And the peace of mind that came from this planning was incredible. And so there is great meaning and benefit to thinking strategically about how giving fits within your own plan. So let's touch very briefly on notable life events. So there are a few key times in our lives where there are opportunities to give ahead of the sale of certain assets. So essentially, we're talking about those assets that have appreciated in value. So grown from, let's say you bought stock at 10,000, now it's worth 100,000. There would be some taxes on that if you sell it. So there are opportunities when you're liquidating investments, selling property or a business, cashing out life insurance policies, and actually receiving an inheritance where you can be strategic about your giving, especially those first three, before the sale of that item. And so it's amazing what people can do when we get smart about our giving during big, big events in our lives, just like at the end of our lives. So, Pete, I want to make sure that we get to a couple things here about Park Nicollet Foundation. So, Abby, if you just want to kind of go ahead, I'll tell you when to stop. So why does this matter? So I'm going to touch on two things here, and then Pete, I want you to talk about generosity at Park Nicollet. So what's really amazing is there's great data out there on the transfer happening right here in Minnesota. And so the current net worth is about 2.19 trillion in Minnesota. About 61 billion of that will transfer with baby boomers. And so one of our calls, and this is just a broad call that I'm encouraging people to think about, is what would it look like if whatever generation you're in, you did a 5% at least gift to charity? That means 95% is still going to your loved ones, but 5%, if we all did that just in the baby boomer section, that's $3.6 billion going to support communities and individuals. So that's a little bit of a maybe call to action here. Pete, do you want to talk about Park Nicollet?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're seeing, and you can go to the next slide, Abby. We're seeing kind of some similar trends as we focus and try to educate and really work with our supporters on estate planning and plan giving and how that can have a huge impact on our organization. Just kind of looking at some rough math and estimates here for our total supporters and staff. We just put the number at about 125,000 people. We currently, out of that 125,000 people, have 54 what we call legacy society members, which are individuals who are leaving us in their estate as a benefactor in some form or fashion. The dollar amount doesn't matter. The percentage or the size of the estate or anything doesn't matter. And so we have 54 of those from 1980. That was when we received our first Legacy Society member, till 2022. That's when 39 of those people, of those individuals joined. Since we've put an emphasis on it, from 2023 to today, we've already had 15 confirmed and unrealized. Unrealized simply means that we haven't received the gift yet. So in more technical terms, it just means that the individual hasn't passed and the funds haven't come to us. So we've really seen a tremendous growth in how this is benefiting our organization and how it benefits donors as well. As Christy mentioned in the example, the individuals in that example, that the gift that they were able to give through estate planning was probably the largest gift they've ever been able to give an organization they support. And at the same time, it provided more value to their heirs, eventually to their children and family, and also obviously to the nonprofit as well. So we're really putting this as a main focus for our organization and for our nonprofit. And then if just 1% of those 125,000 members join the Legacy Society, you can see that, with 15 confirmed unrealized gifts, that's about 3 million. I mean, the math is astronomical. It can have a transformational impact for patient care for our organization across all service lines. We get estate planning gifts in for all service lines. So that's just 1%. We definitely have the community. We've seen the community just show how important our organization is and how important our work is and how impactful it is. And so this is, an area of tremendous growth that'll not only make our hospital community more healthy, but just our overall community as well. So you can go to the next slide, Abby. Yeah. So as I kind of mentioned, our legacy, these are just some of the different areas that that we've already received Legacy Society commitments for. All across the board. A couple of these estate gifts have had a transformational impact on as far as what we've been able to do, some of the improvements we've been able to make. Like literally just kind of new buildings, just all kinds of new treatments, all kinds of new care, and that's through estate gifts. Um, Knowing about tomorrow's gifts, in other words, if we at the Park Nicollet Foundation know what might be coming, or understand who is including us in their estate, that really allows for us to plan, to strategize, and honor not only the individual but also, be prepared to properly apply it to the requested service line. That means we can really identify the needs that are there and communicate with the individual, and figure out exactly how we can support the service line that's needed. So that line of communication between the donor and us, and then the service line, can really have the most positive impact on a person's legacy, and on where the gift is going. And then we were talking kind of just about different ways and different aspects of estate planning. There's also some other tools that are available. I'm going to share a quick story. We had a donor. Sharon is the pseudonym we'll use for her, but she gave about $100 a year. I wrote a check, and she thought that was the extent of what she was able to do, which was fantastically generous. It was just very kind of her, and the Parkinson's Center, which is where she gave to, was really supportive of it and impactful in her life. She found out that once she turned 72, and she actually, when she was 70 and a half, she actually could take a distribution from her IRA each year. And she turned that $100 into $17,500 per year that she was able to give to the Parkinson Center. And she just was not aware that she had that tool, or that method, or that opportunity available to her. And we have a lot of people out there who may not be aware of the impact that they can have on the organization, or on the foundation, or any organization really that they really support. So that's just sort of a little tidbit about how this can really have an impact. So next slide, Abby. So I kind of mentioned it a couple times, because we're having a increased focus on our estate planning program and our estate giving program. We are developing a legacy society. So it's a program that'll highlight the profound impact that the legacy can have, not just at Park Nicollet, but for the people who choose to be a part of the journey. It's more than a group. It's a family. We're going to be a family, and it's supporters who are dedicated to leaving a lasting mark. So why join? Other than obviously the technical benefits that Christy walked through with estate, just sort of health and financial opportunities, and just getting everything squared away. We can ensure exceptional healthcare for future generations. We can inspire others, and we can connect with other people who have the same passions and causes. We're going to start doing some annual celebrations. Again, none of this has happened yet. This is all going to be rolled out in the next year. We're going to do some quarterly gatherings, some recognition. We're going to start doing a newsletter, and you get to come to all these awesome coffee and chats as well. So the ways that you can be a part of the Legacy Society, obviously you can include us in your will or trust. You can give appreciated stock or other assets. We can explore some creative giving options, kind of like I mentioned in my example story, and we can talk about ways to do that and figure it out, so that we can all have the impact that we want. Go ahead, Abby. Next slide. Yeah, so where do you start? So you can start by reaching out to me. If you have not done anything at all yet, then you can reach out to me, and I have a little handy guide that can really kind of break down the basics for you and get you on your way. If you kind of already have an estate plan in place, or kind of already have some accounts that you're thinking about, if you want, if you're moved, you can add the Park Nicollet Foundation as a beneficiary on your retirement accounts. None of this should ever preclude any sort of giving that you're doing now. If you're giving and you feel comfortable doing that, and it's making a big impact, keep that going. Maybe this will even inspire you a little bit more to think about giving a gift to an organization that you support today. Because like I said, your legacy is not after you leave the earth. It's right now, it's current, and we can celebrate it today. There's stocks, there's securities, there's even property, there's all kinds of different assets that you may not have thought about what to do with yet. So The next step, then you can start to branch out and connect with your loved ones. You can write a legacy letter, write down what's important to you. Start having the conversation with family members. It might be a little bit to wrap their heads around, but you can, once you kind of start making that initial conversation, you can all work together and get on the same page communication wise, and that's a big step there. All right, next slide, Abby. So this right here is if you have no idea where to start, I don't know what to do. All of this is, it's inspiring but confusing. How do I start? Well, the best way is you can reach out to me and I can send you what's called an estate planning guide. In that guide is this page right here, which I really like. I think it basically just allows you to write down the things that are important to you. It allows you to write down who gets them, and then it allows you to also write down percentages as well. There's some sample language included on how to make it official. Obviously, all these documents have to be official, but there's some sample language on how to do that. But even if you're not ready for the sample language yet, you can just kind of fill out this workbook just to get your thoughts organized. I think the very first point that Dan and Erica came to Christy about was getting organized and simplify. So this is a really good tool on how to start and simplify exactly what is important to you and what you need. So, and again, there's a packet that I can send if anyone is interested afterward. Go ahead, Christy, or sorry, Abby. All right, and that is it for us, I think, and we can jump on to some questions. I'm not sure how much time we have, Abby, but I think we're able to field some. So
Lovely. Well, first of all, thank you both for your very excellent presentation. And at least for me, I really appreciate examples, real life examples like the example with Dan and Erica, just so that it helps us visualize what that could look like for us when we're creating our legacy. And so one of the first questions that I have for you both is how to approach that conversation with your family members. Like, what recommendations do you have, say, for another future Dan and Erica type of situation? Like, how do you broach that topic with your loved ones, and what have you seen that has worked?
Pete, do you want to start, or do you want
yeah,
me to?
I guess I can start. I think, obviously, without understanding any sort of family dynamic or anything like that, I think the best way to approach it is kind of like how we discussed about making sure it's something that gets organized during the lifetime. So demonstrating how it's beneficial to the whole family during the lifetime to have it just all squared away, and that reduces just an enormous amount of stress and confusion down the line. It's sort of just, I think, a natural family conversation that a lot of times gets pushed off to just completely ignored and pushed off. So I think that strictly from just a organizational standpoint, approaching it as, this is just something that will really help benefit everyone down the line. There's no, emergency or anything that's popped up. We're just going to kind of approach this because this is something that our family needs to do, and we'll all get on the same page and start these conversations right away. And it'll be, I think that usually goes a long way. Some of the families that are a little bit more organized and upfront with it, just more as a, we gotta clean our house, we gotta mow our lawn, we gotta get together and figure out what works well for our estate. So that's my advice. And Christy, I don't know if you have anything else on that.
Yeah, I get the privilege of sometimes facilitating these conversations. I would say bringing it up in a way that works for the family is going to be unique. But often I will see families do kind of family meeting style. Sometimes in-laws are invited, sometimes they're not, but a space where mom and dad, grandma, grandpa can say, hey, we've been working on our plan. We've been really thoughtful about our plan. And so we wanted to invite you in to understanding what it is that we've decided to do and why we've decided to do that. And so it's not usually something that is terribly fun. It can be actually, but I would say most parents and most kids feel a little anxious going in. But often once the conversation gets rolling, there's great opportunity for not just sharing the logistical parts, like who's serving in what roles and, what's structured and going to whom, but also space to really talk about like, hey, this is what our life looked like. This is why we're doing this. Here's what's been meaningful to us. Inviting kids to weigh in sometimes or ask questions. Documenting stories can be a big part of that. And then I often will see in these conversations an opportunity for parents to ask kids about specific items that they hope they inherit. Having those conversations while parents are living can actually alleviate some of the stress and tension that can happen after. So that is something I've seen built into these discussions as well.
Thank you both, because I know it's such a big topic. So it's just, like these tips for how to like bring it up and how to approach it is super helpful. And so to be respectful of your time, I do have one more question. Pete, what is the best way to get a hold of you? So say I want to have a conversation with you about exploring options for, leaving my legacy. Like, what is the best way to get a hold of you? Email, phone? What does that look like?
Yeah, email is fantastic. It's peter.ferry@parknicollet.com. And that's the best way. And then I would love to sit down and meet with anyone who is considering, who just needs kind of to be pointed in the right direction. But mostly if you're considering including the foundation in your state, looking at ways to do that, I will meet with you anywhere. If you're on Methodist campus or Methodist hospital, then we'll grab a cup of coffee. We'll sit down, and it's important for us to get to know you so that we can understand the best way to really honor exactly what you want to do, and figure out exactly the best way to make it easy and to make it again really a celebration of your goals. So, and can we send an email with a follow-up with my contact info, Abby? Is that something we can do? Okay.
Yes,
Perfect.
absolutely. And so what
Email's
we'll
the
do.
best. Email's the best for sure. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Well, that's great to know. Thank you so much. And just for those on the call or listening, just know we will be recording this presentation and sending out the recording this week. And in that email, I'll make sure to include your contact information, Pete. But I just want to, first of all, thank you both, Christy and Pete, for your time and expertise and your excellent presentation. You've made the plan giving conversation seem a lot more approachable and a lot and definitely like a wonderful opportunity for people to explore. So thank you so much for your time.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.